Hello, friends and residency candidates, and welcome to today's success story interview, where I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Tishanna Ferguson, who matched into OBGYN. So, hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Can you tell us a little bit about your match, like where you got into?
Absolutely. I matched, as you said, into OB-GYN at Spectrum Health Hospital, Michigan State University, in my hometown of Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Wow, that is very special to get back to your hometown after, I'm sure, a long journey. Um, and so, was OB-GYN your preferred specialty?
Absolutely. Actually, when I started medical school, I thought I was going to go into surgery. After doing
Mm.
my surgical core, I just realized that it wasn't completely fulfilling for me. And I had my OB core, and I just realized it was everything I wanted. It was the surgical aspect that I love, as well as, the building a rapport and the longevity of the relationship with patients, as well as I get to deliver babies. So it's just the perfect match for me.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. We're very happy for you and glad that you were able to find that field that you felt truly aligned with. It's got to be a very wonderful feeling to have matched into it, especially. So, can you
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit about your journey? What did it take to get you where you are now? For example, when you started medical school, how was that?
Okay, so I attended Ross University School of Medicine. So it's the Caribbean Medical School. The journey to get there was challenging, and the journey to actually finish was even more challenging, but I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm a non-traditional student. By that, I mean I attended undergrad straight out of high school, and I actually took a 6-year gap before attending medical school. So I tried to get into medical schools in the United States, but it was kind of challenging. I struggled with the time being out of academia, as well as I had a child and I did not score well on my MCAT. So Ross gave me that foot in the door, and I was able to show them and prove that I could be successful in medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was medical school like when you finally got to start on the island?
Well, that's a good question because after being on the island only for a few weeks, there was a category 5 hurricane. So I did not have the traditional experience of the island, of the University, of medical school in general. So we moved around a lot. There was a lot of different battles that we had to fight. So along with the rigors of medical school, all of the traveling, all of the just it was always fluid. It was never just stagnant. So I think it made me learn my strengths, but it also showed me that I can persevere through anything.
What helped you get through all of that dynamic and constant change?
I think I know it's my faith. I'm a very spiritual person, so my prayer, and then my family support, and my friends who became my family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
What was the process like when you were starting to prepare to apply for residency?
That was a scary process. So, like I said, I initially wanted to go into surgery, and my OB core was one of my last cores. So, my elective schedule was already complete at the time when I decided to change to OB. So, it was a lot of phone calls on my behalf to the school, to my advisor, trying to change my schedule around to different hospitals to see if they'll let us come in and do a elective. Because of the
Mhm.
pandemic, a lot of hospitals were not letting people do any OB sub-Is. So all I could get was an OB elective. So it was challenging to try to revamp my schedule in such a short time frame.
Yeah.
So that was
And
the
was that
biggest
something you were
hurdle.
able to do?
Yes, I was able to do it. I had one elective, and it went extremely well. And he wrote me an amazing letter of recommendation. I never read the letter of recommendation, but just from his evaluation, I just know that it was a great letter of recommendation.
So was that your one specialty specific LOR that you were able to use when applying?
Yes, I had one. And then I had a letter of recommendation from the surgical core director. And then I had a family medicine. And then I also did a chair letter for OB.
Perfect. And so did you feel that you were going to be a, highly competitive applicant, even though you were maybe short on some of the elective rotations when you started
No.
actually applying?
No, I did not feel like I was going to be a highly competitive applicant. My steps one score was not profound at all. So I struggled with solely applying to OB. My advisors recommended that I apply to family medicine or another specialty, but I just wanted to give it my all and I only applied OB. So I was not extremely competitive far as academia, but I stood out because of research. I stood out because of extracurricular activities. I stood out because of things that I did in the community. So those things actually help supplement my application.
Hmm. So what are some of the extracurricular activities that you feel stood out and maybe were discussed in your interviews, for example?
Okay, so all 4 years I participated in student government. I led a lot of different initiatives. So that was brought up in my interviews. I was in a diversity and inclusion task force. That was brought up in my interviews. And I think those two were the main things that were brought up in my interviews.
Wonderful. And so when you were taking interviews, do you feel that any weaknesses in your application were brought up and they were questioning you about that?
No, honestly, no, they did not. Because all of my weaknesses, I thoroughly explained in my application.
Hmm.
So they could have, asked the question about it, but I felt like they had all the information they needed to know. So the only question that I ever received was, "What do you think your greatest weakness is?" Mhm.
And did you have a good answer prepared for that question?
Yes, my greatest weakness is delegation. It's hard for me to let go of tasks and give it to other people. I would just prefer to just do it myself. But I know being in a team and patient, health and patient satisfaction, you need to give those tasks to other people so that we can share the burden equally, so we can make sure that we optimize patient care and then do everything we can to make sure our patients are satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were looking for programs, maybe programs that fit your step one score, and um, were you using anything in particular to research programs, or how did you go about finding out where to apply?
And that's when I learned about Match a Resident, who helped
Okay,
me tremendously. So I was able
wonderful.
to put all of my factors that I was worried about into Match a Resident. I was able to fill out the questionnaire thing and put my step score, put, that I'm an IMG, put all these different factors in, and it came up with a list. And I used that list. So my method is so as you know, Match a Resident gives you a list, the whole list. Anything below 60, I didn't even look at. So I only looked at everything above 60% of chance of, my likelihood of actually receiving the interview. And from that, I started weeding out by programs that wasn't IMG friendly, meaning they didn't have at least, I quantified it as 6% IMG. So if
Yeah.
they didn't meet that goal for me, then I kind of removed them from my list. And then I also started to wean that list down by going to all of their websites and seeing what they said specifically about step scores, and to see if they were gonna like mention anything about holistic. I
Mm.
didn't want to just globally apply to all 280 programs. For me, that was not a efficient use of my funds, nor I just didn't think that was a great idea for me. So I really did a lot of research to make sure, hey, you're going to look at me holistically. You want someone that's involved in the community, like our goals and our wants align. So I actually only applied to 109 programs, which my school recommended 200.
Yeah. And do you mind sharing how many interviews that generated for you?
Oh, absolutely. I did not get a ton of interviews. I got 4 interviews.
Wonderful. And you ended up with a match, and that's the most important thing. You know,
Exactly.
yeah. And was there anything that took you particularly off guard or by surprise throughout the application season?
No, nothing really took me off guard or caught me off guard. I think the application season was okay. I did a lot of webinars, and then I talked to a lot of students who had already applied the year prior. So they did it in the midst of pandemic. They did it with, Zoom interviews and things of that nature. So that's where I got all of my resources from. So I did not get caught off guard with anything in the application process.
Perfect. And when you were ranking programs, what were the factors that really led you to create the rank order list that you did?
I did a pros and cons list,
Okay.
and
Pros and
mainly,
cons.
yes, for my number one and my number two program, which was they just had wonderful things about both programs that I absolutely admire, and I would love to have been in any one of the four programs I interviewed at. My one and two programs were closer to home, and um, just so now let's just talk about my number one program. They
Sure.
checked off every single one of my boxes for me. So not only is it an outstanding program that's university affiliated, where I know personally their residents who were able to obtain fellowship, and they are like, um, in my opinion, some of the best to that I've ever met. Um, the program director is just amazing, very supportive, so intelligent, like influential. I just want to emulate her. So
Yeah.
all of these factors is just the reason why I wanted to be at my number one and my number two. So I could have went either way, but my number one is my hometown. I used to work for the hospital prior to coming to medical school. It was the best thing to do for me and my family. It was just the best decision ever.
Yeah, it sounds like it was very much in alignment with everything that you were looking for. And
Yes.
so, what is the impact that you're hoping to have on your field throughout your career?
Wonderful. That's a great question. The impact that I want to have is to boost community involvement with the hospital and maternal health. I definitely want to combat some racial disparities in healthcare. I want to combat maternity morbidity rates and things like that. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Hmm.
Perfect. Is there a way that people can stay in touch with you and follow you throughout your medical journey, through residency and beyond?
Oh, sure, absolutely. You can follow me on IG. My hashtag is at Tishanna, Tishanna _Nasha, Nasha.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey, and we wish you all the success down the road to come.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here today.